This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger.
Hello my friends and welcome back to another episode of Test Drive. Today we are looking at the Ford Mustang Mach-E. It's a vehicle that we're pretty familiar with considering we drove it not too long ago. But there are a couple changes coming for 2022 which might make you disappointed. I guess it depends on how much you were hoping to spend on this car because it has gone up in price by about $500 in the US, $700 if you're here in Canada. And unfortunately, I think it's just going to continue to go in that trend. If you watch the news, you pay attention to what's going on in the world, there is a massive shortage of vehicles. But on top of that, inflation has been at an all-time high. I think we're sitting at like 5.6% here in Canada for this year. So everything's going up in price, which is interesting, which is one of the reasons why we actually brought my own 2018 Ford Focus Electric here, because these are two different generations of Ford's electric vehicles. And if we wanted to go really into the history of it, we'd need to get one of the original Ranger EVs that Ford came out with back in the late 90s. But there's two reasons why this Focus Electric is here. Number one, I'm going to be comparing it to a lot more vehicles since it's my own. But also, with a car like this, the price went down since we featured it in 2014, right? We did the 2014, MSRP was X, and then it actually went down a few $1,000s by the time we got to 2018. But it's not the case anymore. 3-4 years ago, electrics were still sort of a niche. But today, in 2021, 2022, people really want them. There is a push towards it, so now the prices are only going to be going up. So it's interesting that only a few short years ago, you could have gotten a vehicle for quite a bit less. Now the MSRP for our Mach-E here, it is the premium, is the more or less fully loaded non-GT, non-California One version. We have the extended range and all-wheel drive, is about $70,000 Canadian. My Focus Electric originally was $35,000 Canadian, $36,700 with the two options on it. So this Focus is half as expensive. It is half the price of what this Mach-E was. And even today in the used market, you could get about 3.5 Focus Electrics for the same price as a Mach-E. But is the new Mach-E really 3 times the car of the generation previous for Ford's electric vehicle? Well, we talked about the Mach-E before. It uses an 88 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. It has 346 horsepower total, or 258 kilowatts. And there's 2 motors in it, 2 electric motors, one in the front and the back, which produce 428 pound-feet of torque, or 580 newton meters. Now, how does that compare to my little Focus Electric? Well, that has a 33.5 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery, so less than half. Gets 123 horsepower, or 92 kilowatts out of a single electric motor in the front, 181 pound-feet of torque, and 245 newton meters. The estimated range in ideal conditions here in North America for the Mach-E, the way it's configured, is 435 kilometers. You do get more range if you go with the rear-wheel drive only unit. My Focus Electric, 185. So it makes sense. If you think about it, it's less than half the battery, less than half the range. But I said there's changes for 2022 aside from just the price. Paint is an interesting change. They've added a couple new colors, including Iced Blue Silver, Cyber Orange, which before now you could have found only on the GT Performance version, and Grabber Blue, which we had on our previous Mach-E, but it was only available on the first edition. So now those 3 colors are going to be available on any trim, any version of the Mach-E that you buy. There's also a new package, the Ice White package. You're going to be getting their ice white paint, and all of the trim pieces on the vehicle, including the mirrors, the badging and all that, will be in this new ice white color. So that's going to be coming later in 2022. And the California Route 1 package is now available with the all-wheel drive configuration. Before, it was only rear-wheel drive. But those are really the only changes, because the other things that Ford has changed for 2022 is more just naming of certain things. For example, the front trunk, I guess we are going with a frunk. That has changed, as well as some of the lane keep systems, the active safety systems on this vehicle. Ford was using their own lingo for a lot of those systems. Now they're using more of the industry normal versions. There aren't necessarily standard names for them yet. We haven't made them law, but they're making them a little bit more accessible for people that might not know what their own naming schemes were. Like the rear parking sensors, they called it the rear parking mandate something. It was a weird name for it. Didn't make sense if you weren't driving a Ford before. So they've made those a little bit more normalized based on the industry. Let's take the Mach-E on the road. I want to talk about how this vehicle performs, handles, drives, how my opinion might have changed in the last few months now that we're driving a little more regularly my Focus Electric, to see if that has changed my opinion about it, and also how the fall weather might be affecting our range and overall performance out of the 2022 Ford Mustang Mach-E. All right, guys, it's Mustang time. Yes, sirree. It's interesting to be able to drive this car so soon after driving it before, but honestly, it's a good time to be able to do it because A, it's a little chilly out. Average temperature here is about 6-7 degrees Celsius every day at night, especially I'm coming home at night now, later than I was before. It is colder then too, so it gives me an idea of what the performance is like on this vehicle. Now, like the previous one that we did, it has the same all-wheel drive system. It's the same extended range version, the 88 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery on this. But what's interesting is how much energy I'm using. So on average, and when we did our 100 kilometer test loop, I averaged 19 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Now, if you think about it, 88 kilowatt hours, and you divide that by 19, you do get pretty close to that 435 kilometers. The thing is though, it's cold out, so I do lose some range. So I don't think I'm quite getting all of that. Even though I'm not using it as much, not sure. Car tells me there's some information. You know, it's one of the things that I think it takes some getting used to, right? It's not like a typical car, and it's also not like a typical electric car. It's why I said in the previous episode we did on the Mach-E that this is a good car. It's just not a great electric vehicle because Ford, they don't have a ton of experience in it. Okay, let's be honest, guys. Yeah, the Ford Ranger EV that came out like 23 years ago, that was their first electric. It was one of the world's first modern electric vehicles that they sold really exclusively. And then the Ford Focus Electric came out, and that used a lot of the same tech that they were using with some of the plugins, some of the other plugins like the Lincoln Aviator that we've done, but even the Fusion that they killed off, which was a great car. It was using kind of similar technology that's found on the Focus Electric. So they haven't developed the technology as long as some of the other manufacturers, just because they don't have as much experience in it, which is why I said, you know, it doesn't quite have all of that feel of an electric car. It doesn't have everything I'd want. You know, for me, you can use the lower gear for brake. You know, most electric cars have a brake mode, but you can't really control it. You know, most of the time you find there's paddle shifters to be able to decrease and increase the amount of brake force regeneration, but it's not on this vehicle. Then even again, with the different drive modes, yeah, I know they're trying to be cute with their little naming schemes, but straightforward stuff is better. Eco mode, normal mode, sport mode makes sense because I'm in what they call unbridled mode, and I guess it's a little bit more performance oriented. You know, throttle response is a little bit better, accelerator response, sorry, but there's also brake force regen built into it. I let go of the gas, let go of the accelerator, look, it's decreasing. Whereas if I'm in just the regular mode, the whatever they call it, you know, I find that you're driving along, you let go, now you're coasting. So again, small things like that. Ford's doing their own thing here, and that's fine, but some of the reasons why I figured that this wasn't quite the best electric vehicle. But now that I've driven my own, now that I bought a Focus Electric, and now that I'm driving the Mach-E again, has my opinion changed that much? Well, maybe a bit, because when we drove the Focus Electric the first time, I said I can see how that vehicle evolved into this, and now that I'm driving this again after driving my own, I do see that the other direction. I see how this was evolved from the Focus Electric, because you do have similar ideas with this. It is an evolution of that original Focus Electric. Now that we're here, you get quite a bit more, you know, range, more tech, more performance oriented. Yeah, I have less range anxiety, but fundamentally the cars are still pretty similar, which is why I like it. You know, now I like it a little bit more because I do see that, yeah, it's just like my Focus, bigger space, different design, much more range, but it's fundamentally kind of the same thing. And the reason I got the Focus is because I really liked it. So now I can see if I had $70,000, then maybe I would have gone for this, but I didn't, and I don't. And it's nice to drive it for the week, but that's it, because it is expensive. That's the problem with all of these cars. The price went up for this. Is it worth that $70,000? To a lot of people, yes, because I do see a lot of these cars on the road. They do sell very well, and I can see why, because it does give you a good overall vehicle experience. The electric portion there, as I've mentioned, could be a little bit better, but for the most part, I mean, these seem to be really well built. Now that this is the second one I've driven, I mean, everything is put together properly. All the seams in the doors, all the panels, everything. There's no rattling, there's nothing. There's about 10,000 kilometers on this car as well, and it's all very well put together. And the ride is very good too. So I mean, you know, when we look at one car, it's hard to know for sure if we find little issues, but it's the second one now. Everything works out very well with it. So I'm still satisfied with it. I still do recommend looking at this if you're in the market for an electric car, because it's got this really nice look to it. I think that the design on this is on point. It's not too funky, not too out there like a lot of electric cars are. This does feed off of what the Mustang has always sort of looked like, kind of builds on it and creates something new. I don't think Ford, has necessarily shot themselves in the foot by calling this the Mach-E, but you got to think long term too. 20, 30 years from now, when every single vehicle is an electric, will Ford still be selling a Mustang Mach-E along with a Mustang that maybe looks a little bit more like what we've come to know as a Mustang, but also fully electric, because everything else is? It's interesting. It's one of those debates that, everybody's got their own opinion about it, and nobody knows really for sure what the future holds, but I can see, this being a good contender for long-term survivability with the name. I do like it. So overall, great little vehicle here. I enjoy it. The electric stuff could be updated a little bit more, having a little bit more information in here. I think that's something that Ford could add somewhat easily, especially with the over-the-air updates. I think that it's doable. So I hope to see more from the Mach-E. I know that this is really a carryover year. It's only the second year of production, so I'm not really expecting to have a whole lot of changes for it. Some extra paint colors are nice. I'm hoping to have the GT Performance Edition later on in 2022 when I have the chance to book it. It's booked pretty solid, as you can imagine, and the press car, at least the one that they have right now, is in that grabber orange color. It looks really nice. So it's a popular car on our fleet here, so I'm hoping to get into it. But any questions you have about it, leave a comment below. I'll try to get back to you. Give a thumbs up to this video if you liked it, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. And since you guys have been good little boys and girls, let's do a little performance testing here. So that's full throttle as we go around that corner. Man, like, it's just effortless power. And yeah, I've turned off the propulsion sound. I had it before, I had it on the other one that I drove, and yeah, it's cool. You kind of hear like a grumble, but it's an electric car. It shouldn't sound like anything, and I kind of like that. So now let's we'll do a little. There's no launch control here, folks. Like, it's an electric. But if we go from dig, there we go. It's not quite as performance oriented as the GT, but still 100. You get up to speed, 0 issues. So that's a little one for you. I know some of you guys, they don't watch it until the end. So now you got to. You watch until the end, you get the performance stuff. So there you go. I've enjoyed it. I'll let you know in the comments below what you have any questions about. I'll get back to you. But thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.